I pulled into the driveway earlier than usual that Friday, around 5:30, give or take. I had the windows down, the breeze was soft, and the smell of bakery fresh pie filled the truck. I'd grabbed Zach's favorite, cherry with the buttery lattice crust, and a tub of vanilla bean ice cream that cost more than it should have. It was one of those small things, you know? Trying to make the night feel special even though life had been anything but. I figured we'd eat dinner, maybe throw on a movie, and for once, just be together. That's all I really wanted. That and a sense that we were okay. That the silence between Haley and me meant peace, not distance. But that idea shattered the second I turned into the driveway. There it was, a bright red Tesla. Flashy. Parked dead center like it owned the space. I slowed down, confused. I ran through names in my head, friends, neighbors, delivery guys, but nothing clicked. No one I knew drove that. I even checked the plates, hoping for familiarity, but nope. Out of state. And then I saw her. Haley. She was standing on the front steps, right where she used to wait for me when we first moved in. Only this time, she wasn't smiling. She wasn't even pretending. Her arms were crossed, like she was annoyed that I had the nerve to come home. Dressed in a black top that clung too tight and jeans she hadn't worn since her clubbing days. Her hair was done. Eyeliner sharp enough to cut glass. Lips glossed. The kind of look you put on when you're meeting someone new, not your husband of 12 years. And she wasn't alone. Next to her was a guy I'd never seen before. So, maybe 6 feet 2 inches, 6 feet 3 inches. Athletic in that personal trainer kind of way. Clean shaven with a Rolex peeking out from under his cuff. Everything about him screamed confidence. Or arrogance. Maybe both. His hand rested casually on the shoulder of a boy who looked about Zach's age. Next to that boy stood another, maybe a year younger, with the same haircut and matching expression, that cocky, too comfortable look that didn't belong in my front yard. I was still in the truck, hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than I realized. My heart had started to pick up speed, and I hadn't even opened the door yet. Then I spotted Zach. My kid. 11 years old and way too emotionally smart for his age. He stood by the front door, his body half turned toward me like he didn't know whether to run to the car or stay frozen where he was. His eyes were wide, searching mine, silently asking me something I didn't have the answer to yet. That's when Haley moved. She pulled her purse tighter over her shoulder, turned to the guy beside her, Steve, I'd later learn, and said something low I couldn't hear. Then, without even glancing back at me, she stepped up to the door. Reached into her bag. Pulled out her house key. Not mine. Not ours. Hers. She slid it into the lock like it was just any other day. Like this was her place, her rules, her decision. The door clicked and she walked in. Like I didn't exist. Like I was just some ex she used to know. Steve followed, guiding his sons inside with the same ease you'd use walking into a hotel lobby. One of the boys looked back at me as he stepped through the doorway, that smirk still plastered on his face, like he knew exactly what was happening and was weirdly proud of it. I sat there in the truck, pie and ice cream on the passenger seat, the engine still running, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. It felt surreal, like a dream you know isn't right but can't wake up from. Inside, I could see movement, shadows crossing the living room. The outline of Haley tossing her purse on the couch. Steve's duffel bag stacked beside the ottoman. A pair of running shoes, not mine, by the shoe rack. They weren't visiting. They were moving in. And they didn't wait for permission. Zach still hadn't gone inside. He stayed there, standing in the doorway like he was holding something back. Or maybe he just didn't want to be part of whatever was happening. I watched him glance back into the house, then back at me. I could see it in his face, that confusion, that ache of loyalty tearing down the middle. I finally killed the engine and stepped out of the truck. No one came to greet me. No one said a word. The silence was louder than anything they could have shouted. Haley finally appeared again, inside the house now, framed in the living room window. She looked at me like I was a stray dog sniffing around a fence she'd already locked. She didn't say anything. Just stood there, arms crossed, watching. I walked slowly toward the porch, my boots crunching the gravel, my legs heavier than they should have been. Zach took a step forward like he wanted to say something, but then he stopped himself. He just looked down at the pie in my hands. And I swear, in that moment, that simple detail broke me more than anything else. He looked at the pie. Like it mattered. Like it still meant something. But it didn't. Not anymore. I didn't step inside right away. Something about that threshold felt final, like crossing it would mean surrendering to whatever twisted version of reality Haley had just introduced. So I stood there on the porch, holding a pie that was quickly going warm, while my son, my kid, stood between two worlds. The one we built and the one she was now shoving in. "Zach," I said gently. My voice cracked. I hadn't realized how dry my throat had gone. He turned toward me, eyes glassy but steady. Not crying. Not yet. But he was holding something in. Something big. That kind of quiet panic kids get when they know too much but don't know where to put it. Before I could say more, the door opened behind him. Haley again. "It's okay, Zach," she said, like I wasn't even there. "Come inside." He didn't move. "Now," she added, firmer this time. And I swear, her voice had never sounded so foreign. Like someone else was speaking through her. Zach glanced back at me. That look, that pause, I'll never forget it. He was waiting for me to tell him what to do. For me to give him a reason not to go in. But I didn't know what to say. What do you say when the world flips on its axis and no one bothered to warn you? So I just nodded. A slow, reluctant nod. And he stepped inside. Not because he wanted to. Because he didn't want to be the cause of more chaos. As the door shut behind him, I heard the deadbolt slide into place. That was the moment it hit me. Not a metaphor. Not a slow realization. A cold, physical hit. This wasn't an argument. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a takeover. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, shared mortgage payments and sleep-deprived nights with, had decided I no longer lived here. And she didn't even bother to text first. I finally stepped inside, letting the screen door creak behind me. The first thing I noticed was the shoes. 5 pairs. 3 of them didn't belong. One had neon green laces, like they belonged to a kid obsessed with Fortnite. One pair of Nikes looked brand new, probably Steve's. All lined up neatly, like this was their home now. My house smelled like someone else's cologne. That was new. The duffel bags weren't even zipped up. There was a basketball poking out of one. A crumpled hoodie tossed over the couch that had been my nap spot on Sundays. Haley was pouring wine. My wine. The kind I'd bought for our anniversary and she'd claimed she didn't like. Now she was sipping it in leggings and smugness. Steve walked in from the hallway like he'd just finished a tour. Like he was admiring the square footage. He gave me this slow, tight-lipped smile. That fake, non-confrontational kind people give when they know they're trespassing but think charm will smooth it over. "Hey man," he said. "Didn't know you were coming home early." Didn't know? Like there was a schedule for me now? I didn't answer. I looked at Haley instead. She set her glass down, wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, and gave me this look. That mix of practiced sympathy and complete detachment. "We need to talk," she said. "Yeah," I replied, barely keeping my voice steady. "We do." I walked over to the kitchen table and set the pie and ice cream down, gently, like it still mattered. Then I leaned against the counter. Not to seem casual. Just to stop my knees from giving out. "You couldn't wait till he was asleep?" I asked, nodding toward the hallway, where I knew Zach had gone. "You really needed to do this now?" Haley shrugged. "There's no good time, Daniel. You would have spun it into a fight no matter when I told you." That got under my skin. Not because it was true, but because it was the kind of lie that dressed itself in logic. I stared at her, then at Steve. "And him?" I asked. "This was your plan? Just move him in while I'm at work? Let my son open the door to strangers?" "They're not strangers," Haley said quickly. "Steve and I are what?" I snapped. "Friends? Lovers? Roommates? Don't stop now, Haley. You've already kicked the front door down." Zach's voice came from the hallway then. Quiet but clear. "She told Steve I was a mistake." Everything stopped. Haley turned, startled. "Zach, what are you?" "You said I was a mistake," Zach repeated. "You said I reminded you of Dad too much. That I was holding you back. That if it weren't for me, you'd be free." His words didn't have venom. He wasn't yelling. He was just reporting. Like he'd found something rotten in the attic and was calmly showing us the evidence. Haley's face drained of color. Then it turned red. "Zach," she said sharply, "you read my messages? That's private." "That's me," he said louder this time. "You were talking about me. I had the right to know." She opened her mouth, searching for some spin, some softening. But she couldn't find it. Not with Steve standing there. Not with me watching. Not with the lie already rotting in the air. "I didn't mean it like that," she said finally. "You were never, Zach, I love you. I just—" "No, you don't," he cut in. "You love you." Haley's mouth snapped shut. The tension in the room was so sharp it felt like a wire stretched between us all. And that's when I moved. I walked over to the hallway closet and reached up, pulling down the thick manila folder I'd kept hidden behind the board games. I'd started building it months ago. Something in my gut had known. The hotel confirmations. The call logs. The screenshots. The receipts. The pieces she left behind thinking I'd never connect them. I placed the folder on the coffee table like it was a contract. Steve stepped back. Haley stared at it, blinking. She didn't open it, but she didn't need to. She recognized the cover page. The date. The location. The name of the hotel she'd said didn't exist. And for the first time since I'd walked in, she didn't have a comeback. She didn't even try. Steve shifted, hands in his pockets. That confident aura started to crack. His jaw clenched. He looked around, probably realizing this wasn't the version of the story Haley had sold him. "Maybe we should go," he muttered. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Maybe you should." Haley looked at me, eyes wide now. Like she hadn't expected it to go like this. Like she thought the house, the kid me, would just roll over. But I didn't move. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just stood there, between her and Zach. And when she took a step forward, reaching for our son, my son, I stepped in front of her. She froze. And that was it. Steve started gathering the bags. One of his sons grabbed the neon-laced shoes and shot Zach a little wave. Zach didn't return it. He just stood in the hallway, watching them leave like someone watching a door close on a dream they didn't want to wake up from. They left with less noise than they came in with. No drama. No yelling. Just silence. And Zach, he stayed on the porch long after they drove off, staring at the spot where that red Tesla had been parked like he was trying to erase it with his eyes. And I let him. Because I knew exactly how he felt. The next morning, the house felt different. It wasn't just quiet, it was stripped. Like someone had walked through and taken all the invisible things that make a place feel like home. The silence had weight. It clung to the walls. I woke up before Zach, sat on the edge of my bed staring at the floor, pie box still sitting on the counter downstairs, untouched. I made breakfast anyway. Not because I was hungry, I wasn't. But habits are hard to kill, and something about making pancakes felt like I was holding on to something real. I added chocolate chips like I always did for him. Set out the syrup. I didn't call him down. I just waited. Zach appeared around 8, hair messy, eyes tired. He didn't say anything at first. Just walked over, sat down, and started eating. Bite after bite, slow and mechanical, like he didn't want to think, just chew. We didn't talk about her. We didn't need to. He looked up once, mid-bite, and asked, "Are they coming back?" I shook my head. "Not today." He nodded, like that was all he needed. No follow-ups. No tears. Just a quiet understanding that something huge had changed and wasn't going back. After breakfast, I told him he could skip school. Not because he asked, but because I knew he needed a minute. He just shrugged and said, "Okay." No excitement. No protest. Just resignation. Around noon, I got the first text. It was from a number I didn't recognize. "You embarrassed her. You ambushed her in front of her kids. That's emotional abuse. She's planning to return with police to collect her things." I read it 3 times. Then again. The wording. The tone. It wasn't Haley. It was someone speaking for her. A friend, maybe. A lawyer. Or Steve, hiding behind a burner number. Either way, it didn't matter. The message was clear. She was going to try and make herself the victim. A few days passed. Nothing happened. I kept Zach close, stuck to routines. Homework, dinner, bedtime stories, even if he was technically too old for them. It grounded us both. We didn't talk much about her. Sometimes I caught him staring at the front door like he was bracing for it to open. I started locking it even during the day. Not for safety. For peace. Then she showed up. Wednesday afternoon. 2 patrol cars. I heard them before I saw them. Gravel crunching under tires, 2 sets of doors slamming shut. I walked out onto the porch as she stepped out of the passenger seat. Big sunglasses, pale pink blouse, hair done too perfectly. Like she dressed for a scene. Behind her, 2 officers flanked the walkway. They weren't tense. Just there. Following protocol. "Daniel," she said with a sigh, as if this was a burden I created. "What's this?" I asked, though I already knew. "I'm here to collect some of my belongings," she said coolly. "I was told you might be resistant." I looked past her to the officers. "I'm not going to stop her," I said. "But she's not taking anything that isn't hers." One officer nodded. "We're just here to keep the peace." Haley walked past me, letting her perfume hang in the air like a warning. Inside, she paused at the photo wall. The one with Zach's baby pictures, our wedding, the vacation to Charleston. She scoffed. Actually scoffed. "You still have these up?" she said, more to herself than me. She moved fast after that. Grabbed some clothes, a few of her shoes, the hairdryer. Started yanking open drawers she hadn't touched in months. At one point, she reached for a watch box sitting on my dresser. My watch, the one my dad gave me before he passed. "No," I said firmly. She looked at me, lips curling slightly. "It was a gift. It was mine. From my father." One officer stepped in between us. "Ma'am, let's just stick to personal items." Haley rolled her eyes but backed off. She tossed a few more things into a duffel and zipped it shut like she was done performing. As she walked out, she paused on the porch. "Turn back." "Just so you know," she said, slipping on her sunglasses, "Steve's planning to propose. We're building something real." I said nothing. Not out of restraint. I just didn't care. Because I already knew. A friend of mine had texted me a photo earlier that week. Steve eating dinner at a trendy restaurant across town. Candlelit table. Holding hands with a blonde that definitely wasn't Haley. Same place Haley once called our spot. Guess it wasn't sacred anymore. Haley didn't know I knew. But I liked it that way. She thought she had won something. She hadn't realized yet she was already losing. After she left, Zach came downstairs. He had watched from the top of the steps. Didn't say anything about the cop cars, just asked if she said anything important. "Nothing worth remembering," I told him. He nodded. That night he asked to sleep in my room. I didn't ask why. Just made room and let him curl up beside me like he used to after nightmares. He fell asleep fast. I didn't. I lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering how a life could unravel so fast, so quietly. By morning, we didn't mention her. Not during breakfast, not while packing his school bag. It was like we'd silently agreed she no longer belonged in the day-to-day. Just a ghost. Something we'd heard creaking down the hall but stopped checking for. But the peace didn't last. Friday, just before dismissal, I got a call from Zach's school. A teacher had witnessed Haley near the school parking lot, trying to talk to Zach. No formal pickup scheduled. No notice. Just her, waiting by the edge of the fence like a parent who still had rights. Zach refused to go near her. She left after being approached by a staff member. No incident. But it was enough. I filed a formal complaint that same afternoon. The response? Another text. This one from her actual number. "You're poisoning him against me. He's a child, Daniel. He deserves a mother." I didn't respond. Just saved the message. My lawyer told me to start collecting everything. Every word. Every move. Not to engage. Just document. That weekend I sat Zach down. I didn't give him the ugly details. I didn't need to. I just told him the truth, that his mom was struggling, that she made choices that weren't healthy for any of us, and that until things got better, she wouldn't be around the same way. He nodded. Didn't cry. Didn't get angry. He just asked, "Do I still have to see her?" I hesitated. "For now," I said. Maybe. But not alone. And not unless you feel okay with it. He looked down at his cereal bowl. I don't want her to come back, he whispered. I didn't say it, but in my head, I agreed. Neither did I. The court date came faster than I expected. One moment I was sorting through the mess Haley left behind. Emotionally, legally, physically, and the next, I was sitting in a stiff chair, my hands balled into fists, listening to her attorneys spin the kind of story that only works if no one in the room actually knows the truth. She's a mother who's been emotionally isolated for years, her lawyer said, pacing like we were in a play. Left unsupported, disconnected from her husband, forced to make difficult decisions in the name of her own mental well-being. Haley sat there like she believed it too. Wearing beige, no makeup, hair pinned up like she was trying to project softness. She even clutched a tissue like she'd rehearsed it. The performance was strong, I'll give her that. Tears when it helped, silence when it didn't. The kind of woman you'd feel bad for, if you didn't know she had moved another man into my home with 2 kids like it was a timeshare. Then it was our turn. My lawyer didn't pace. She didn't raise her voice. She just presented the facts. One by one. Screenshot by screenshot. Hotel bills lined up with weekends Haley claimed she was visiting her sister. Copies of messages from her to Steve, and worse, about Zach. Ones where she said she couldn't wait to be free of the dead weight, meaning our son. There were logs of missed calls. Photos of Zach sitting on the sidewalk outside an ice cream shop after Haley had promised to meet him and just didn't. When the therapist report came in, it sealed it. Zach wasn't just hurt. He was confused, anxious, mistrustful of any adult he didn't know well. He'd drawn pictures where he was in the middle of a house split in 2, both sides pulling at him, stretching him so thin he looked like a stick figure breaking in half. The courtroom went quiet. Haley didn't cry during that part. Maybe she was saving it for later. The judge ruled quickly, faster than anyone expected. Full physical custody to me. Supervised visits for Haley. No overnights. No unsupervised pickups. And only when the therapist said Zach was ready, not her, not the court. Haley's expression hardened the moment the words left the judge's mouth. All that gentle sorrow dropped like a mask falling off. She didn't even wait for the gavel. She stood, grabbed her bag, and stormed out like she was the one who'd been wronged. Outside, I caught up with her. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to walk past and get Zach back to school. But she stopped me, grabbed my arm, not hard, but enough to make me turn. You think you've won? She spat. You humiliated me in there. But twisted everything. I didn't lie, I said calmly. I just stopped covering for you. Her eyes flared. You turned him against me. I didn't even blink. You did that on your own. She stared at me like she wanted to scream but couldn't find the air. Then she backed off, shook her head, and walked away without another word. On the way home, Zach sat in the back seat, headphones on, staring out the window. I didn't push him. I didn't ask how he felt or if he was okay. I just let him be. I think we were both processing in our own way. That night, I watched him sleep. He had that slight smile he gets when he's dreaming about something good, probably a new game or biking with his friends. It was the first time in weeks he hadn't tossed and turned. The house was finally quiet in the right kind of way. Over the next few weeks, life slowly began to settle into something that resembled peace. There were no more surprise texts, no cryptic voicemails, no red Teslas parked outside. Just me and Zach in a slowly healing home. I moved her remaining things into storage. Boxed up the memories that hurt too much to keep seeing. I didn't throw them away, not yet. But I didn't want them in my line of sight either. Zach laughed more. He ate more. He started humming again when brushing his teeth, something he hadn't done since before this all began. One evening, he came into the living room carrying an old photo album I hadn't seen in years. It had the faded leather cover, the one Haley insisted on using for our first few years together. Inside were pictures of holidays, birthdays, trips to the beach. A younger us, smiling like we had a clue what we were doing. He sat next to me on the couch, flipping through the pages slowly. Pointed to one where Haley was holding him as a baby. She used to be nice, he said, not with sadness, but with confusion. Like he was remembering a movie he'd once loved but had long since outgrown. Yeah, I said quietly. She was. He turned the page. That was it. No deep emotional breakdown. No big talk. Just acknowledgement that the woman in those pictures didn't live here anymore. And that was okay. Zach had started asking if we could go hiking again, something we used to do before life got too loud. So that weekend, we packed up our gear, left our phones in the glove box, and drove upstate. The trail was steep in places, but the air was clean, and for the first time in forever, we both felt weightless. We didn't talk about Haley. We didn't talk about Court or Steve or any of it. We just walked. Talked about school, about dogs, about if pancakes taste better in the woods. He asked if we could go camping next month. I said absolutely. And in that moment, I knew we were going to be okay. Because sometimes, the best thing someone can do for you is leave. She thought bringing Steve and his sons into our home would shatter us. She thought her absence would wreck us. But what she really gave us, me and Zach, was something she never meant to: clarity. She lost the best part of her life. And we got something better than her back. We got peace. We got back from the hike late Sunday evening. The sun had dipped below the trees by the time we pulled into the driveway, both of us smelling like campfire and sweat, grinning for no reason at all. Zach asked if we could leave the windows down a little longer. He liked the wind, the way it made everything feel open. Free. I couldn't say no. Inside the house, it felt warmer somehow. Not in temperature, but in tone. There wasn't any of that tension in the air anymore. No wondering what mood Haley might be in, no holding my breath when the door opened. Just quiet, the good kind. Zach threw his backpack by the stairs and went straight for the fridge, asking if we still had any of that leftover lasagna from Friday. I told him to check. He did. We ate dinner in our camp clothes, barefoot and messy, like we didn't know the world anything. Later that night, I sat out on the porch with a beer, just watching the stars. The sky had that deep indigo color it only gets right before fall really kicks in. There was a chill in the air. Crisp, still. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something bad to happen. I thought about Haley. I hadn't heard from her in almost 2 weeks. No calls. No texts. Just silence. The last voicemail she left, the one before I finally blocked her number, was one of those scattered, frantic ones. Voice trembling, begging to just talk, saying she was sorry, then flipping into anger halfway through, blaming me for everything that went wrong, accusing me of turning Zach into a stranger. It ended with her crying. But even then, I didn't feel guilt. Not anger either. Just this emptiness. Like the words couldn't stick anymore. Like she was yelling across a canyon, and I was too far to hear her. And that's how I knew I was really done. Not just legally. Emotionally. Spiritually. Whatever you want to call it. She was a closed chapter. And I was already pages deep into the next one. Zach came out a few minutes later, barefoot, blanket over his shoulders, and sat next to me. You good? I asked. He nodded. Can we go back next weekend? To the trail. Yeah. Or maybe a new one. I smiled. We'll find a new one. He leaned his head on my arm. Just for a second. Then stood and said goodnight. I watched him go inside, and I swear, it felt like I was watching a version of myself, one I still had the chance to protect. I stayed out a while longer. Just thinking. About the way things broke. About how some endings are loud and chaotic, and others are quiet and necessary. About how sometimes the people who say they love you the most are the ones who do the most damage when they finally show you who they really are. And how peace, real peace, doesn't come with answers or closure. It just shows up one day, sits beside you and stays. I went back inside, turned off the porch light, and locked the door behind me. Not because I was afraid of anything coming back, but because I was finally safe in my own home. And I wasn't giving that up again.